My name is Sarah, and I'm 24. Everyone says I have musophobia, an unusual fear of mice and rats. But after everything I've been through, I think this fear is completely justified. Before, I only found rats and mice a little gross, not the terrifying obsession they are now. Everything started when I was a sophomore in college and working part-time at Chuck E. Cheese. The location I worked at used to be known for being clean and well-maintained in every area. That was until a new manager named Adam took over. Adam acted like he loved Chuck E. Cheese and was very focused on keeping the restaurant running smoothly. However, his personality was really weird. From the time Adam arrived, things started changing in suspicious ways. This became the root of everything I had to go through with these sick, disgusting, and above all, malicious creatures. We often saw Adam in strange situations, like walking around with his head down, as if he was hiding something. Many times, we caught him watching the employees. We were strictly forbidden from calling Adam or going into his office without permission. The unsettling thing was that the facility got dirtier and dirtier since Adam got there. The customer areas were still clean, but the kitchen and basement became filthy. Even though he wasn't in charge of cleaning, my coworkers and I couldn't help but wonder if he was involved in the mess. Everything was fine as long as everyone avoided Adam. But one day, I accidentally got too close. That day, we heard a lot of noise coming from the basement, which was usually deserted. My shift leader asked me to go down and check what the noise was. Adam's office door was locked, so I figured he was inside as usual and didn't want to be disturbed. I thought I had the minimal authority to do my job. I went down to the locked basement storage area by myself. Once inside, it looked much darker and scarier, like a haunted room from a horror movie was put into a section of Chuck E. Cheese. And then I saw it. At the end of the room, a dark figure was moving and making the noises. At first, I thought about calling security, but something else caught my attention. I saw the person was wearing the manager's jacket. I approached to confirm if it was Adam and why he was staring at a drawer that way. He didn't seem to notice I was there. As I got closer, I confirmed it was Adam, but he looked like he was in a trance, completely unaware of his surroundings. "Hey boss, are you okay?" I called out and touched his back. Adam jumped, startled, and dropped a box onto the floor. The box shattered, and in that moment, my entire world fell apart. Dozens, no, hundreds of rats poured out, flooding the Chuck E. Cheese basement like a black tsunami. They scattered everywhere, crawling up the walls, over my feet, and onto my body. Their tiny claws scraped through my clothes, and their slick tails whipped against my skin. Their foul odor shot straight up my nose. Their frantic squeaking piled on top of itself, echoing in my ears. Adam fell into a state of complete, insane panic. He dropped to the floor, eyes wide and crazy, and kept screaming, "No, my rats! Don't leave your daddy! Come back to daddy!" He started frantically grabbing the rats one by one. The terrified rats bit his hands, drawing blood, but Adam didn't seem to feel any pain. He hugged them to his chest, kissed their backs, and whispered loving words. "Don't be afraid, my babies. Daddy will protect you." My fear multiplied tenfold. I was frozen to the spot. Suddenly, Adam's eyes focused on me with hostility. His face distorted, and he roared in fury. "This is all your fault. You hurt my babies." He stood up, still clutching two huge, squirming rats, and started walking toward me. "You won't survive getting out of here. You'll be food for my babies." I burst into tears, terrified to my core, but I couldn't move. The rats in his hands started biting Adam fiercely, but he just chuckled as if they were kisses. I tried to reason with him, but it was useless. Adam was completely out of control, Suddenly, a scream came from the stairs. It was one of my coworkers. Adam seemed to forget about me for a second, and I took the opportunity to run toward the exit. When my coworker and I reached the door, we were both horrified by the sight we saw. Adam was lying face down on the basement floor, his shirt torn open, his skin covered in deep rat bites. He was crawling on the floor, one dead rat in his mouth, clutching two other squirming ones in his hands. The desperate squeaking of the rats mixed with Adam's sick moans. Daddy's babies are hurting. Daddy will heal them. Adam tried to stuff the rats into his shirt pockets. Suddenly, Adam looked up at us. "What are you two doing here? Leave us alone. We're having family time." I slammed the door shut from the outside and locked it, while my coworker called security. Soon after, an ambulance arrived and took Adam away. Rumors spread quickly, and we soon learned the truth. Adam suffered from a psychological disorder that made him obsessed with rats. He was the one who had brought the filth to the place, releasing rats for them to nest at Chuck E. Cheese. As for me, I never want to see another rat in my life. I had to quit my job at Chuck E. Cheese because every time I saw the cartoon rat character, I got scared. I can never forget the disgusting feeling of them crawling all over me. I always wonder, what would have happened if my coworker hadn't come down to the basement? Maybe only Adam knows.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
I am Ethan. That day, I went to Northwood University as usual, but as soon as I stepped into the main building, the atmosphere was strangely quiet. The students I did see in the hallway were moving around hastily. Just as I set foot in the classroom, the alarm blared loudly, accompanied by a lockdown order. The speaker announced an emergency, warning of an unidentified external threat. I was stunned and looked around. The classroom was empty. The silence after the alarm made me feel utterly abandoned. I panicked, but first, I needed to find a safe hiding spot. I ducked under a desk, huddled up as tightly as I could, and kept silent. After a while, the lockdown alarm stopped, but there was no further announcement. I waited for a while longer, but the eerie silence continued. Teachers and other students didn't appear either. I decided I had to go check the situation. Stepping out into the long, deserted hallway, I only saw dim light. The further I walked, the heavier the sense of isolation became, turning the familiar space into a bizarre maze. I began to see things that weren't normal. The fluorescent lights flickered, stretching my shadow into a distorted shape on the floor. Then, I saw a pitch-black shadow in a hidden corner, and in that darkness, I saw two glowing red eyes staring at me like a predator lurking. My entire body tensed up, and my heart pounded in my chest. The thought that the thing was about to pounce on me made me start running. I ran wildly until I came across a classroom with light spilling out from under the door. Through the small glass window, I saw a scene where a lecturer in a lab coat stood next to a group of students, seemingly in a lab session. I knocked on the door repeatedly, begging for help. But when the lecturer saw me, he didn't open the door. His face shifted to an expression of astonishment mixed with worry. He signaled to one student to lock the door more securely, while another student quickly pulled out a phone to call someone, their voice urgent and full of anxiety. I didn't understand what was happening, but I strongly sensed the situation was bad, so I kept running down the hallway. I saw another classroom. Through the slightly open door, I saw a student tied to a chair, his mouth gagged, letting out continuous muffled moans. I tried to yank the door open to help him, but it was locked tight. His moaning made me feel even more helpless. Just then, a man abruptly appeared at the end of the hallway. He had a large pair of scissors in his hand. He looked at me, his eyes cold, and ordered me to stand still. I was trembling. Before I could act, he suddenly lunged toward me. "Don't be afraid, I'll help you." His voice sounded gentle, but was incredibly creepy. I didn't believe him. I screamed and ran wildly. Running to the end of the hallway, I saw another man sitting hunched in a corner, clutching a syringe. His appearance was ragged, his eyes were wide, and his lips held a gruesome smile. I immediately understood that I'd just run into an addict having a bad reaction. He jumped up, rushed over, and pointed the syringe directly at me. I turned to run away, but I was blocked by the man with the scissors from before. The two men teamed up. They wrestled me to the floor, gripping my arms tightly. The sheer panic drained all my strength. I screamed, thrashing and pleading in vain. I saw the shiny needle pierce my skin. Despite my desperate resistance, they just laughed loudly in amusement. Their laughter echoed throughout the empty hallway. It was the last sound I heard before everything went dark. I woke up in a stark white room, smelling the familiar scent of antiseptic. Then, I realized I was tightly restrained to a hospital bed with soft leather straps. A doctor wearing a name tag that read Dr. Miller was standing nearby, looking at me with a calm, somewhat tired expression. "Ethan, how are you feeling? You missed your medication and ran around causing a disturbance. It took us a lot of time and effort to calm you down. You've been given a sedative shot. Now please rest." I couldn't say anything after hearing the doctor's announcement. A clattering sound next to me startled me, and I turned my head. A nurse was preparing medication nearby. I stared at those pills, and clarity slowly returned, but with it came a shattering truth. The real world was far more cruel and simple than the hallucinations I had just experienced. I sank into deep shame and utter emptiness. I am a psychiatric patient. I'm Emma. When I was 22, I took a teaching job at a small private preschool in the northern suburbs of New York. It began with confusion and ended in horror. The school only had 12 students, a small number for the area, but the principal explained that it was a private school with high tuition, so only a few families could afford to send their children here. But the oddest thing to me wasn't the number of students, but a particular school tradition. Once a month, 2 teachers would host a camp-out night in the classroom. The students would bring their sleeping bags, eat dinner together, listen to stories, and sleep over. The principal said this activity helped the children learn independence and build friendships. I thought it was a nice idea. My first camp-out night took place in my second week of work. I was assigned to co-host with the lead teacher, Ms. Wilson, a middle-aged teacher who had been there for many years. She was quiet, reserved, but seemed very dedicated to her work. I cooked pasta and meatballs for the kids. Then we played games, and by 9 o'clock, everyone was in their sleeping bags. The children were well behaved. No one was restless. I thought everything would be peaceful until morning. But around midnight, I woke up to a rustling sound. I looked around and saw a 4-year-old girl named Mia sitting up in her sleeping bag. Her eyes were glazed over, as if sleepwalking. Suddenly, she stood up and stumbled toward the classroom door. I panicked, quickly getting up to follow. But Ms. Wilson suddenly gripped my arm tightly and pulled me back down. I was so startled I almost screamed. She put a finger to her lips, signaling me to be quiet. "Don't follow her," she whispered urgently. "She's going outside." I know. Every year during these camp-out nights, one child always does this, wandering outside. in the middle of the night. It's the rule that we don't follow them. What rule? Why? I don't know where they go either, but they always return to their sleeping bags safely in the morning. Don't interfere. It's an unwritten rule among the teachers here. I stared blankly at the door, not knowing what to do. This was my first night supervising this activity. I reluctantly listened to Ms. Wilson, but I still couldn't relax, deciding to wait until Mia returned safely before going to sleep. About an hour later, I heard faint footsteps. Then a small shadow appeared at the door. Mia had returned, crawled into her sleeping bag, and lay down to sleep as if nothing had happened. I looked at Ms. Wilson, but her eyes were closed. She seemed to be asleep. I lay still all night, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The next morning, Mia woke up happily. I observed her all morning, but Mia showed no strange signs. I wondered if the night before was just a dream. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the strange rule Wilson had mentioned. I decided to ask a young teacher named Sarah, who had worked there for 2 years. When I told her about the rule not to follow the children, she looked at me in complete shock. What rule? I've been working here for 2 years. I've never heard of that. Why didn't you follow Mia? But Ms. Wilson said. Sarah immediately cut me off, her tone anxious. Ms. Wilson isn't right in the head. Don't believe what she says. Then she told me about a tragedy. 2 years ago, Ms. Wilson lost her only daughter in a car accident. The child was named Sophie. She was only 5, and she had attended this very school. Afterward, Ms. Wilson and her husband divorced. She completely broke down and started saying Sophie's spirit was still at the school. Wilson frequently talked to the children about Sophie as if the child was still alive. The principal and other teachers tried to help, getting her psychological counseling. Lately, Ms. Wilson had mentioned Sophie less, but she still talked about strange things related to the spiritual world. I sat in silence, a shiver running through my body. I decided I had to ask Mia. That afternoon, I sat down next to Mia. The little girl was too young to explain clearly. She said she heard someone calling her name and went outside to find them. Mia said she went to a place with many large stones, a big house, and played in the yard. When asked who she played with, Mia replied it was an older sister. I figured it out. The preschool was next to an old church, and behind the church was a small cemetery. The large stones were gravestones. The big house was the church. Mia had gone to the cemetery at midnight and played with an older sister. The second camp-out night took place 2 weeks later. This time, I was assigned with Sarah. I was determined to find the truth. After the children fell asleep, I lied to Sarah that I was going to the restroom, then sneaked out to the cemetery to wait. But Sarah followed me. She was worried because I was acting suspiciously. We hid behind a large tombstone and waited. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, but they weren't a child's footsteps. They were an adult's. A figure appeared in the cemetery. It was Ms. Wilson. She wasn't assigned to tonight's campout, but she was here anyway. She was walking back and forth between the rows of graves, as if searching for something. Then she stopped in front of a small grave, knelt down, and began talking to it. Sophie, my love, Mom found a new friend for you. I'm going to bring the baby here to play with you. You won't be lonely anymore. I was stunned, instinctively squeezing Sarah's hand so tightly that she let out a small yelp. Who's there? Wilson's angry voice made us freeze. Ms. Wilson quickly approached. When she saw us, her eyes became frantic. Today is my day to play with my daughter. Don't you dare interfere. I saw she was hiding something behind her back. Sarah pulled me back and whispered, "She has a baseball bat." We turned and ran for our lives back to the school, locked the door, and called the principal. About 20 minutes later, the police and the principal arrived. Ms. Wilson had disappeared. The next morning, she didn't show up for school. Sarah and I went to Ms. Wilson's apartment with the police. We followed the information from the teacher's office and found Ms. Wilson's apartment. The door was unlocked. In the dark, musty, and cluttered room, we discovered an old photo album. When I flipped to the page with family photos, I was frozen. Every photo of Sophie, Ms. Wilson's deceased daughter, had her face cut out and Mia's face pasted over it. I trembled. On the desk, there was a detailed journal about Mia's habits, her family's schedule, and a specific plan to bring my daughter home. Now I understood. There was no ghost of Sophie. Ms. Wilson had lured Mia out to the cemetery on the first campout night, played with her, and was slowly building a relationship with Mia, preparing for the day she would abduct her. The strange rule, not to follow the children, was her way of preventing me from discovering her plot. The police found Ms. Wilson that afternoon, wandering near the cemetery with a doll dressed in children's clothes. She was still endlessly calling Sophie's name and saying she had to bring her daughter home. They took her to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. The conclusion was that she suffered from severe delusional disorder following the trauma of losing her child. Mia's family was informed, and they moved away immediately. They didn't want their daughter to stay in that place for another day. The school temporarily suspended the camp-out program to review safety policies. I was given paid leave to stabilize my mental state, but I just kept thinking about what could have happened if we hadn't discovered it in time. I don't know if I can continue working there, but at least that horrifying night was over, and Mia was safe.
My name is Jenna. I'm 31 years old, and I've worked in the mental health field for over 10 years. I used to think I was experienced enough to spot red flags from a mile away, but some things, well, experience just can't prepare you for them. It all started in early winter of 2023. An old colleague named Martha called me, sounding completely desperate. She claimed she was being softly evicted by her landlord over a small misunderstanding and had nowhere to go. Without hesitating, I agreed to let her stay with me. We agreed it would just be for a few weeks until she could get back on her feet. However, living together quickly became suffocating because of Martha's strange behavior. At first, it was just small things I tried to ignore, but as time went on, it happened so often that I started to lose my patience. I have epilepsy, so the most important things for managing my seizures are getting enough sleep and avoiding stress. Martha knew this perfectly well. Yet, every single morning at 5 a.m., she would go into the living room right outside my bedroom door to make coffee. The clatter of the machine, the clinking of spoons against porcelain, and her heavy footsteps on the hardwood floors felt intentional. Even though I begged her several times to be quiet, she would just nod, only to do the exact same thing the next morning. On top of that, Martha constantly ate all the food in the fridge and left hair and nail clippings all over the floor. When I confronted her, she just said blankly, "I don't have the habit of cleaning up." Then things took a more serious turn. Martha ruined a pot that had belonged to my grandmother because she left it on the stove for hours. She also broke several other items that were very precious to me. Martha never apologized. She always acted indifferent, as if she had never done anything wrong. The breaking point happened one evening when I opened my nightstand drawer. I discovered that the sleeping pills my doctor had prescribed the week before were mostly gone. I was furious. When I asked her about it, Martha denied it at first. Then, she claimed she thought I didn't need them anymore. I couldn't hold back my anger. I told her clearly that these were prescription meds and she had no right to touch them. That night, I locked my nightstand and put the key in my purse, carrying it with me everywhere. Even my two cats, who are usually very friendly, started acting strange. Every time Martha entered the room, they would bolt and hide under the bed. Animals often sense things humans miss. I should have paid attention to that sign much sooner. The truth finally came out when I ran into an old classmate at a coffee shop. By total coincidence, she used to live in the same building as Martha. When I told her Martha was staying with me, she dropped her spoon on the table and turned pale. My friend told me Martha wasn't evicted over a disagreement. The truth was that Martha had broken into a neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night while holding a knife. Luckily, they caught her in time and called the police. Martha was sent to a psychiatric facility for several months, and the landlord forced her out immediately after. I felt paralyzed. It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. I had brought someone with serious violent tendencies into my home. I knew I couldn't let this go on for another day. That evening, I told Martha she had to move out within the next 10 days. I lied and said my boyfriend was moving in, hoping she would understand. From that moment on, Martha became a different person. She would sit silently for hours with a blank stare. Sometimes her lips would move like she was whispering to someone, but no sound came out. I tried to start a conversation a few times, but she ignored me completely. I figured she was just angry about my sudden decision. Then came that fateful night. I woke up around 3 a.m. It was like I had a sixth sense that something was wrong. I slowly opened my eyes and my heart nearly stopped. Martha was standing perfectly still in my bedroom doorway. Her hair was hanging down, covering most of her face. All I could see through the strands were her eyes, which were unnaturally wide. I was frozen with fear. We stared at each other until Martha realized I was awake. She immediately turned and ran toward the kitchen. I heard a loud metallic clang on the floor. I jumped up and threw on the lights, gasping for air. Right where Martha had been standing lay the largest kitchen knife from my set. She had been standing there, watching me sleep, with a knife in her hand. I didn't dare go back to sleep. I locked my bedroom door and stayed awake all night, holding a knife of my own. Early the next morning, I packed all of Martha's things into bags and forced her to leave immediately. Martha didn't fight back. She took her bags with that same blank expression and walked out of the apartment without a word. I locked the door behind her, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My life eventually returned to normal. To be safe, I changed every lock in the house the day she moved out. About a month later, I heard some shocking news. Martha had set fire to her new apartment. During a severe psychotic break, she claimed she heard voices telling her to burn everything to save her friends and family from the devil. When kind neighbors tried to break down the door to save her, Martha fought them off like a maniac. She poured alcohol onto the flames and laughed as the fire grew larger. Finally, she was tackled and taken away. The medical evaluation showed she had stopped taking her medication months ago. Martha was convicted of first-degree arson and was committed to a high-security mental hospital indefinitely. When I heard the news, I thought back to that terrifying night in my doorway. If I hadn't woken up at that exact second, I wouldn't be here today.
Here is what really happened on Christmas night when I was 11 years old. That evening, my parents had a company Christmas party they said was impossible to turn down for Dad's career. They decided to leave me home alone. Before leaving, Mom carefully instructed me to lock the doors, left the emergency numbers on the fridge, and reminded me to order pizza if I was hungry. Dad left $20 on the kitchen counter, patted my shoulder and said, "You're a big boy now. We trust you." I ordered pizza, turned on the cartoon channel, and curled up on the sofa. The gentle twinkling lights from the Christmas tree made me feel relaxed and sleepy. The house was unusually quiet. I don't remember exactly when I drifted off, only that when I woke up, a sudden chill hit me, making me shiver, and my first thought was that the heating system was broken. Then I saw that the back door was wide open. Snow was blowing in with the wind, leaving a distinct, melting trail on the wooden floor. I stared blankly for a few seconds, still groggy, trying to remember if I had forgotten to close the door. I rushed over, slammed the door shut, and carefully secured the deadbolt. When I turned back, I realized something was wrong. A small porcelain Christmas candle jar near the door shelf was knocked over, and the dining table cloth was clearly pulled to one side. This wasn't caused by the wind, but by some kind of force. I turned off the downstairs lights and went straight upstairs, wanting to quickly burrow under the covers and forget the creeping feeling of unease. As I stepped onto the third stair, I heard a sound. It was crying. Not loud crying or screaming, but a soft, suppressed sobbing, yet clearly audible. I stopped, my hand clutching the staircase railing. The sound was coming from above, right from the hallway where my bedroom was located. I looked up and saw a sight that froze my entire body. The attic stairs had been pulled down. That old wooden ladder was always locked by my father with a heavy iron hook, as our family had no reason to use it. But that night, it was lowered right in the middle of the hallway. And then the next sight was 1,000 times more horrifying. A red, bloody, smeared face peered down from the attic opening. 2 eyes stared straight at me. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Every sense felt completely paralyzed. Only my heart was still working, pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The Christmas string lights downstairs were still twinkling. In the moments the light flashed, I saw more clearly. The face belonged to a gaunt woman, almost skin and bones. Deep, fresh cuts crisscrossed her face. The blood was still wet, dripping onto the wooden floor, one drop at a time, forming a dark red puddle beneath my feet. Her eyes stared at me obsessively. I don't remember how I ran out of the house. I only knew that I was running across the freezing snow, my panicked screams echoing throughout the quiet neighborhood. I kept running and yelling for help until the light from the neighbor's house, an elderly couple living 3 houses down, turned on. They rushed outside. The woman immediately wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and held me tightly. The man immediately called the police. My parents arrived even before the police. They held me very tightly, frantically asking if I was hurt anywhere, but I couldn't answer. I could only shake my head and point toward the house. The police quickly found the woman in the attic. She was huddled in a corner, whispering things no one could understand. As they led her out, I clearly saw her face with the bleeding cuts. I remember my parents hugging me very tight and my mother whispering the boy was in there alone with her. Then Mom burst into tears, repeatedly stroking my hair. I was still in shock after the incident. I still couldn't understand the woman's purpose. A few days after Christmas, the police concluded the investigation and reported that the woman was an escaped psychiatric patient from a hospital a few miles away. She believed she was trapped in the wrong body and had tried to peel the skin off her face to find the true, pure face underneath. That night, in her delusion, she climbed over our garden fence. The twinkling Christmas lights outside the window made her believe this was the place God guided her to, a heavenly home. She sneaked in through the back door and made her way to the attic, where she believed she was closest to heaven to carry out her mission. She had been up there for many hours. I suffered a mental breakdown and required intensive therapy. My parents also changed. They never spoke directly about it, but I could see it in the way they looked at me. Mom arranged her work schedule to stay home with me during that time. Dad sealed off the attic entrance with wooden planks and concrete. I got much better after nearly 2 months. Our family returned to a more normal and much more connected life. Now, as an adult with my own family, I often tell this story to my wife and children every Christmas. My wife and I always keep our promise, never to leave the children home alone.
My name is Melody. After I graduated from community college, I fell into the world of skincare and massage therapy. It was completely different from what I studied in school, but it really fit my personality. I worked in that field for about 3 years, mostly at a small boutique spa downtown. Everything was going fine until February 2018, when I was 24 years old. A coworker of mine came up with the idea to start offering in-home massage services on the side. We wanted to help specific clients who couldn't easily make it to the spa, like pregnant women needing prenatal care or the elderly. Since business at the spa was slow at the time, I agreed. We made a strict rule to only accept female clients from those specific groups to keep things safe and professional. One afternoon, I got a booking call from a woman asking for postpartum care. The address was for a house in the suburbs on the west side of town, near Beaverton. I showed up right on time, but when I knocked on the door, a woman didn't answer. Instead, a man around 50 years old opened the door. He looked like he'd had a rough life, but he was incredibly polite. He acted confused and explained that his wife had booked the session but sent me to the wrong house. "My wife is actually at our main house over in Old Town," he said. "I'll drive you over there myself." I hesitated because I knew that area. It was a sketchy, complicated neighborhood in the heart of Portland. "Don't worry," he urged. "I promise to give you a huge tip on top of the service fee." Because he seemed so desperate and his explanation sounded reasonable enough, I agreed to go. After about 20 minutes of driving, we arrived in Old Town. The area was filled with cramped, crumbling houses and narrow streets, and the atmosphere felt heavy. The man parked on a main road and led me on foot down a small, narrow alley. The whole way there, he remained very polite, chatting about his wife and their newborn son. We reached a house at the very end of a dead-end alley. It was surrounded by old buildings that looked completely abandoned. The iron gate was severely rusted, with flakes of orange rust peeling off to reveal dull, dark metal underneath. When we stepped inside, I noticed something chilling. The shoe rack near the door only held men's shoes. I immediately asked the man where his wife was. "She's in the bedroom right at the end of the hall," he said. "I'm going to grab some water. Go ahead and head inside." With that, the man disappeared toward the kitchen. I walked to the room and knocked politely, but when I stepped inside, the room was totally empty. There were no baby clothes, no signs of a woman living there. Nothing. I spun around, intending to bolt for the door, but he was already standing there, blocking the exit. The friendly look on his face was gone. I tried to stay calm and took a few steps back. Before he could react, I reached for my phone to text my coworker, but I wasn't fast enough. He lunged at me, snatched the phone out of my hand, and barked, "Cell phone signals aren't good for the baby." Then, he pulled a small paring knife out of his pocket to threaten me. I gasped and put my hands up, trying to speak softly so I wouldn't set him off. "You want money, right? I'll give you everything I have." He let out a loud, hollow laugh, and then suddenly started crying. He kept waving the knife around and began rambling about how his wife left him because he was a failure, how lonely he was, and how he had nowhere else to go. His eyes were wide and bulging, and his hand was shaking so hard I realized I was facing someone who was having a complete mental breakdown. I was backed into a corner, my back against the cold wall, talking non-stop just to buy time, even though I was certain I was going to die. Just when I had lost all hope, there was a loud, thundering bang on the door.
"Open up! Police!"
The iron door was kicked open. 2 officers rushed in and tackled the man, who was screaming like a maniac. An older female officer ran over to me. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" I could only shake my head as I burst into tears. I was free. I was safe. In the back of the police car, an officer told me what happened. That house had actually been abandoned for a long time. An elderly woman living nearby knew nobody was supposed to be there. When she saw me walking into the alley with a strange man in the evening, she got suspicious and called 911 immediately. I thought the nightmare was over once he was taken away. But a month later, while I was trying to put my life back together, I got a call from an unknown number. It was a woman's voice asking to book an in-home massage. Because of what happened, I started asking a lot of very specific questions. Suddenly, the voice on the other end changed tones. It turned into a man's voice, and I recognized it instantly. "You've met me before, haven't you?" he said, followed by a chilling, delighted laugh. My heart dropped and my phone hit the floor with a thud. He had been released. Maybe because of his mental state, he wasn't held criminally responsible. He was likely sent for a short-term evaluation and then released back into the community like a ticking time bomb. I didn't even bother calling the police again. I realized the legal system couldn't protect me from someone insane. That very night, I packed my bags and moved back to the city where my parents lived. I threw away my SIM card and quit the massage business forever. Even now, 6 years later, the sound of his voice and that laugh still haunt my dreams.
I'm Rich, 37 years old. For now, I've managed to gain a life just like my namesake, financially stable and spiritually fulfilling. My childhood wasn't that. My body's full of scars. That's the scars of unhappiness that would never go away. Before my hell, I lived happily in a loving, caring, financially stable family. My friends were often jealous of me, having my mother and father taking care of me very well, adhering to my every needs. My mother took great care of me, while my father was in charge with raising me to be a good person. The most important thing I'd been taught was to be nice with my family, especially with my little brother, but I had no younger brother to speak of. I had never seen him at all. When I was 8 years old, it was when I realized that there was indeed a baby in my mother's belly, and the baby was due to come out soon. One day, when I went home from school, my parents told me that I'm about to be a brother. They were very happy, and so was I. As I touched on my mother's tummy, I immediately knew that it was a brother, because my parents always told me so. Overall, my family hung tough on the delivery, even though my mother constantly lost her appetite. She remained steadfast on her love towards me, even more so than usual. However, after a while, my parents' happiness seemed to have vanished. I didn't even see my little brother growing anymore. I hugged her tummy, asking about my brother, only to have an angry look back from her. "That's your sister, and she won't come to be." My mom then angrily left me in confusion. At the time, I wasn't able to understand what she meant by it. A year later, my parents once again happily announced the arrival of my brother. My mom hugged me tightly at the news. And in the mood, I promised to always be his protector. My parents took a lot of commemorative pictures for my brother, hanging them all around. My mother spent her few last due days by my side before my brother was born. She made me promise to love, to take good care of my baby brother without conditions. I was ready for it, and counting down the days I'd finally see him. I even practiced myself on the caring for him as well. One day, I saw many medical staff around my home, and my mother was in a lot of pain, where the door to my mother's room was locked. I was worried sick, yet my father reassured me that it's just the baby on the way, and she would only be in a little bit of pain, that's all. And on that same day, 6 o'clock sharp, June 6th, my baby brother was born. I was taken inside to meet him for the first time. He was so tiny and cried very loud. Yet as soon as I touched his reddish skin, he immediately stopped crying. My parents burst into tears full of joy, lovingly gazed at the two of us. My brother's named Dominic, and he grew up healthily without much issues. Yet as time went by, I could see Dominic's nature clearer. He was very naughty and at times deceptive. Every time caught making a mistake, he'd often not hesitate to cry his way out or lie his way out. Dominic often attacked me, violently and at times very dangerous. Yet I always gave in, as I promised my parents, unconditionally. But deep within me, I was afraid of his joy in inflicting pain on me. His eyes, it was not of an average toddler. It's more akin to a predator, sharp, cold, and calculating. The more he grew, the harder he was to control, and his deception seemed to grow with it. I had once noticed Dominic devouring a raw beef fillet straight from the fridge. Yet my parents didn't seem to believe me at all. They thought of it as me being jealous. Their perceived negligence even drove me to the point of personal hurt, that I harbored a feeling that I was not their biological child. The more I thought of it, the surer it seemed. I mean, look at it. Everywhere in this home there's only Dominic. Dominic, Dominic. I was nowhere to be seen. Dominic might be the only child in this home if I wasn't there. When I was expressing my frustration to my parents, out of nowhere Dominic appeared. He threw an angry look upon me, the look like he was grinding down on the fillet. I was surprised with my parents' indifference. Why can't they feel it? Or Dominic had also devoured their souls already? My childish thought pulled forth. The days later, my parents' negligence was more and more evident, while Dominic ramped up his violence. That time, I stood my ground and paid the price for it. I was hospitalized due to a shoulder fracture. I was discharged a week later with a lot in my mind, where my mother took me to my room herself. She was much thinner and in a lot of fatigue. When asked about Dominic, my mother didn't say anything. She left me alone there, but I did see tears on her eyes. Due to the after effects of pain medication and exhaustion, I fell asleep. When I came back to my senses, it had already been evening. When I heard the sounds coming from my brother's room, I remembered that I hadn't talked to him yet. I hoped I could talk to him and make peace with one another. The closer I am going to his room, the more nauseous scent of metal and rotten assaulting my nose. It made me shudder thinking about Dominic devouring the raw beef fillet. I pressed open the unlocked doorway, then suddenly froze at what I saw inside. It was something straight out of a horror movie. And I saw it now, right in front of me. Dominic was ravenously devouring my pet dog, Cooper. In the corner of the room was a human arm and some scattering pieces of flesh. Dominic stared at the intruder with his bloodshot eyes, his face smeared with blood, still chewing. He immediately threw Cooper's body to the floor and came charging at me. I yelled aloud, running toward the stairs. I screamed for my parents, telling them to quickly lock their door and call the police. Seeing their son's condition, they quickly followed. I hadn't fully recovered after the hospitalization. Then Dominic bit hard on my arm. The pain was soul-crushing, yet with my father's timely intervention, I made out of there, though not without a scratch. He had torn out a huge chunk of my flesh. The police arrived and had to resort to all extreme measure just to capture Dominic. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was held in isolation in the hospital. The human arm in the class was of his fellow classmate. About the other smaller bits, I didn't dare think about them. My parents were devastated hearing about their son. What might happen if I was alone with him that day, I wondered. Now come to think of it, Dominic was born at 6 o'clock on the 6th of June. All 666. Maybe that was a sign? And I often wonder whether my family was better had my parents weren't so heartlessly threw my sister away.
I once dated a girl who was crazy and perverted. My name is Rick. I'm 29 years old. 2 years ago, I worked at a movie theater in this charming little town called Galena, Illinois. I had been there for 3 years, and I was getting ready to move to New York in a few months. One night while I was working at the theater, I met Maya, the pretty girl with the long flowing dress and big brown eyes. She looked a bit shy and was awkwardly glancing around the theater hallway. I went up to her to see if she needed help and found out it was Maya's first time at the movies. After I showed Maya to the theater, I stood outside for about 2.5 hours.
As soon as the theater doors opened, I looked for Maya because I wanted to get to know her better. Maya gave me a really sweet smile, so it seemed like she wanted to get to know me too. "Do you want to go to the cafe nearby?" "Sure, I'm all for it." As I replied to Maya, I pulled out my phone and quickly texted my coworker to cover my shift. I shared a bunch of funny stories about the cinema with Maya. She laughed a lot, and her smile was so charming, it kind of took my breath away. I noticed that Maya was pretty quiet. She mostly just listened and observed. At 10 p.m., Maya quickly said goodbye and took off. I grabbed her hand and gave Maya a movie to take with her. "I hope you come to the cinema more often. I hope we will meet again." My face turned red after saying that. Maya looked at me, smiled, and then left without saying anything. A week later, Maya still hadn't come to the cinema. I kicked myself for not asking for her contact info. Maya's image kept popping into my head. I think I fell for her the moment we first met. One morning, when I showed up at the cinema to start work, Maya was standing there. Her face looked pale and tired, with red, swollen eyes. It seemed like she'd been crying a lot. Still wearing the same dress from that day, Maya was holding the tape I gave her with both hands. I ran over, and before I could even ask, Maya hugged me and started crying. After Maya calmed down, she told me about what was going on with her family. Maya was the only child in the family. They had a small farm, and Maya took care of everything on her own. Her mom was really controlling, and her dad was seriously ill and couldn't walk. That night, after finishing work outside, I didn't go home. I went straight to the cinema. And my mom found out. She was really mad and locked me in. Maya had a few purple marks on her wrists. I asked her about them, but she quickly pulled her hand away, looking pretty panicked. Maya asked me to hang out with her because she didn't want to be alone at the moment. I took a day off right away, ran to the nearest clothing store, and got Maya a new outfit. That beautiful smile came back, and we strolled around the street together like a happy couple. Out of nowhere, two tall, intimidating guys came walking toward us. "Got a new boyfriend, Gina?" The tattooed guy glanced at Maya and gave her a smile. "Last night was awesome, wasn't it?" The two guys exchanged looks and laughed. Maya was really confused. She grabbed my hand and pulled me away. Once we'd put some distance, Maya looked at me and quickly explained that they had the wrong person. She had never hung out with people like that. I believed Maya. Her confusion was kind of endearing. I took Maya home, and she ended up sharing a lot with me. Maya dreams of becoming a professional dancer and wants to leave the farm and this town to make the dream a reality. I asked her to come with me to New York so we could start a new life and she could chase her dream. Maya smiled, and we had sex on her lead. The next morning, I offered to give Maya a ride home. It took about 30 minutes to drive from my place to Maya's house. It's a small house in the middle of a farm. The inside of the house was pretty messy. Noticing my surprise, Maya said it might be because of the two dogs her family had. Maya suddenly grabbed my hand and said, "I have something to show you. Come to my room." The hallway was pretty dark, and as we walked past the room, a nasty smell hit us. Maya said the mess was also from the two dogs, and that her mom definitely hadn't cleaned up carefully. Maya quickly pulled me toward the room at the end of the hallway. This was Maya's room, and it had a pretty simple and old setup. At that moment, Maya seemed like a different person. There was a weird smile. Her eyes showed she was bracing for trouble, and she kept pacing back and forth. Maya suddenly pounced on me, leaving me confused. Then I heard a small but noticeable scream. "Gina!" Before I could even react, Maya went back to being her usual self. She grabbed my hand and said she wanted to take me to the farm to introduce me to the little friends she was taking care of. I asked about the scream I just heard, but Maya just kept pulling me along and vaguely said there was no scream. Maya's family farm had animals like chickens, crows, and pigs, but there weren't very many of them. Where are your 2 dogs? What are their names? I don't have dogs. Maya's answer made both of us freeze. Maya avoided my look and walked away. I ran after her, feeling anxious and confused, and bombarded Maya with questions. I ran after her and suddenly she grabbed a shovel, glared at me, and charged over. I tried to run, but Maya managed to hit me hard on the right hand. The pain was sharp, and I heard a cracking sound. I was pretty sure my shoulder blade was broken. I fell down, then another shovel hit me, while Maya's eerie laughter echoed around. I kicked her leg, and Maya fell down. Seizing the chance, I used my legs to pin her down. I only had my left hand free, so I fumbled with my phone in my pocket, pressing the call button to dial the police. Maya got up, grabbed my phone, and threw it away. My headache was making me dizzy, so at that point, all I could do was run. The animals on the farm got scared and started running in all directions. At one point, I almost ran right into a bull. I fell down, and at that moment, Maya's image looked like a tiger contentedly enjoying a meal after a long hunt. She was about to get revenge on me with a fatal blow, but thankfully, the police arrived just in time. Maya was restrained by 2 male police officers, while I was treated by 2 paramedics. I told the police about the smell and the screams. After searching the house, they found a man in a wheelchair, gasping for breath. He was Maya's dad, and she had been starving him for days. The smell was because he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. The screams were coming from a woman who was in pretty bad shape. It was Maya's mom, who had been locked in the basement since the night of the argument. Maya's real name was Gina. She was 35 and had a complicated history with the town's troublemakers. The flood of information left me feeling completely overwhelmed and in shock. Maya was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Part of the reason was her strict and controlling mom. Her harsh control made Gina constantly crave a way to push back. Gina was taken to a mental health facility for treatment. Her parents were also lucky to be rescued and were moved to a nursing home. I quit my job and left Galena as soon as I got out of the hospital. I learned a big lesson about love and trust. It's something you really need to understand before giving it to someone. The crying doll on the double-decker bus. I'm Francis, 28. I have a girlfriend who's 26. We live and work in Houston, and we've been together for almost 3 years. After wrapping up a big project that took 6 months, I planned a 7-day vacation for my girlfriend. I picked Chicago as our destination, since it's where my girlfriend was born and grew up until she was 10. She remembers a lot from when she was little, and shares those memories with me often. Chicago is a beautiful city and definitely worth experiencing. I booked a flight and a hotel, and we meant to spend a really meaningful and happy week together. No words can depict her happiness and excitement. She told me about how Chicago has changed compared to 16 years ago. It was really meaningful and interesting for her to recall her childhood while experiencing the city again. On the evening of our 4th day in Chicago, we decided to take a double-decker bus tour to see the city after dinner. Chicago at night was absolutely amazing, and the weather that day was perfect. The bus was pretty empty that day. We sat in the back row, a girl was in the middle row, and another couple sat up in front. I liked how sparse it was. It made everything feel more private. I gave my girlfriend a necklace with the first letters of our names engraved on it. We shared a quick kiss and laughed together. I jumped when something really hot touched my foot. I looked down and saw a baby bottle. I figured it must have belonged to the girl sitting in the middle row. I walked up to the girl and said, "You dropped the baby's bottle." The girl was startled, turned around, took the bottle from me, and said thank you. I really love kids and have told my girlfriend many times that I'm ready to become a father. I sat in the empty chair opposite the mother and daughter to watch the baby for a bit. I asked, "Is that a boy?" because I noticed the blue clothes and the thin blanket. The girl smiled and replied, "Yes, his name is Jonathan." But when she pulled down the thin blanket, I was startled to see that it was a doll. My smile instantly turned awkward. "Do you think my son is cute?" I nodded and quickly went back to my seat. My girlfriend asked me curiously what happened. "I think that girl lost her mind." I told her what I saw, and at first, she thought maybe I just saw it wrong because it was dark. I wasn't sure either, since I was confused and didn't get a good look at the baby in the girl's arms. We decided to just ignore it and continued enjoying the city. About 10 minutes later, while we were sitting in the front row chatting and laughing with the couple, suddenly, the girl's sad singing voice echoed through the bus, and it was heartbreaking and painful to hear. The couple turned to look at the girl and then glanced at us with uncomfortable expressions. We were just as confused, and I couldn't help but get goosebumps. The wind, which had been really cool, made me shiver. Remembering the movies we had watched, the mother who had lost her child and was so sad and had lost her memory, thinking that the dolls were her children, it was really similar to what was happening now. My girlfriend walked over to the girl. I couldn't hear clearly what they were saying. I just saw my girlfriend's smile turn into confusion before she quickly returned to her seat. My girlfriend told me she noticed the girl's shirt and the towel around the baby seemed quite wet. The girl must have just given birth recently, and the wet shirt and towel were from milk flowing out. But she was holding a doll, not a real child. We looked at each other with concern. My girlfriend suggested we get off at the next stop and end the bus tour there. I agreed. From that moment on, we all kept an eye on the girl, and so did the other couple. Suddenly, the girl stood up, walked to the center of the seats, and shouted, "This is my son Jonathan. I just bought him this afternoon." As she spoke, she smiled, but it looked more like the smile of a lunatic than the happy smile of a mother. The next moment, the girl was crying again, hugging the doll tightly to her chest. "My previous son couldn't be used anymore. He kept crying a lot, all day long." The other 4 people on the bus were all frozen, and we didn't know how to react. Suddenly, a baby's cry really rang out. The girl immediately stopped crying and went into a total panic. Could it be that the cry was coming from the doll? The girl hurriedly searched for something. The baby's cry seemed to trigger her nerves. After a while of searching, she threw the doll aside and rushed to the bag at the seat where she had been sitting. From the large bag, the girl pulled out a child. This had to be the real Jonathan she just mentioned. The girl hugged the little child to her chest and tried to comfort him. The child kept crying, and the young mother, feeling helpless, cried along with him. I quickly pulled out my phone and called the police, reporting the situation and what was happening. The bus had just stopped at the next stop, and the couple hurriedly ran away. I ran to inform the driver, while my girlfriend stayed behind to comfort the mother and the child. On the lower floor of the bus, I quickly summarized everything to the driver. Suddenly, my girlfriend screamed loudly in a panic. A small blue object, making the sound of a baby crying, passed through the window of the bus on the first floor. I was stunned for a few seconds. The crying stopped, and then there was another loud scream. A small dismembered body was lying on the road. The driver and I panicked and rushed up to the second floor of the bus. I ran to where my girlfriend was kneeling and crying on the ground. She hugged me tightly, her body shaking and her hands cold. The other girl was holding a doll and singing a lullaby happily. The police arrived, sealed off the scene, immediately helped take the girl to a treatment facility, and asked everyone involved to go to the station to cooperate with the investigation. It took a while for my girlfriend to calm down and describe the horrific and heartbreaking scene. That girl was Louisa, a mother who had just had a baby boy a little over 3 months ago. Louisa was suffering from postpartum depression and psychosis because she wasn't getting the care she needed. Her husband had been having an affair since Louisa was 6 months pregnant. Louisa had been mentally tortured by her husband and his lover for a long time. How much endurance, despair, and fatigue would it take for someone to act like that towards their own child? Louisa's husband and his lover need to be held accountable and face appropriate punishment. Louisa is getting treatment, but I can't imagine how painful it will be for her when she finally realizes what happened. I'm sure Louisa isn't the only one going through this. There are a lot of young mothers out there under pressure, having to care for their children all on their own. Children and women always need to be cared for, supported, and protected in all circumstances.
This happened when I was 16. It was a weekend in Ohio. My parents were out at a friend's wedding and said they'd be home late. They asked me to stay home and take care of my little brother. He was 6, clingy, and always glued to cartoons. Jake was planted in front of the TV in the living room, totally zoned out. I headed to the kitchen to grab some orange juice from the fridge. Our house sat at the very end of the street, with just a few other houses scattered nearby. Behind us was a small patch of woods, mostly tall oak trees. As I was pouring the juice, I glanced out the kitchen window. It was already dark out, and the yellow streetlights were casting this dull glow over the driveway. That's when I saw someone standing next to my neighbor's trash can, maybe like 30 feet away. He looked like he might have been homeless. He was staring straight at me, right through the kitchen window. I took a step back. Maybe he was just passing by. I waited a few seconds, then looked again. He was still there, still staring. Only now, he was closer. He was standing right at the edge of our yard. "Jake, come upstairs," I called out, trying to sound chill. "Why? The cartoon's not over yet. Just go upstairs, now." Jake must have caught the seriousness in my voice, because he shut off the TV and dragged himself upstairs without arguing. I flipped off the kitchen light and looked out the window again. The guy was gone. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Maybe he'd finally left. But just as I turned to leave the kitchen, I caught movement by the dining room window. He was still there, circling the house. My heart was slamming in my chest. I took off running, checking every door and window, hands shaking as I double-checked the locks. My palms were slick with sweat. Then I got to the living room, and there he was. Outside, right there, trying to mess with the window. I backed up until I hit the wall. I needed something. Anything. My brain was spinning. Kitchen knife? No. Too risky. What if he grabbed it from me? I yanked open a drawer and fumbled around. My hand landed on something cold. Heavy. Mom's meat hammer. I pulled it out, felt the solid weight in my hand. "Jake," I whispered, still downstairs. "What?" Relief washed over me. He was okay. I peeked out one last time, then crept upstairs to him. He saw the hammer in my hand and squinted. "What are you going to do with that?" I didn't answer, just went around the house, turning off every light. The place went pitch black. Only a bit of streetlight spilled in through the windows. I took Jake to my parents' room and locked the door behind us. This room was all the way down the hall, the farthest one from the stairs. If anything happened, at least we'd have some time. "Why'd we turn off the lights?" Jake whined. "We're playing hide and seek," I told him. I pulled him into the closet. It was just big enough for the two of us to sit down inside. Jake huddled close next to me. Through the crack in the door, I had a partial view of the bedroom window. I listened. Other than the wind rustling through the oak trees, it was dead quiet. 10 minutes passed. Maybe the guy had left. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Jake was getting antsy. He wasn't built for sitting still this long. He kept whispering about wanting to go back down to watch cartoons. "Not yet. Sit still." "But I'm bored." I put a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Stay still. We'll go down in a bit." And then I heard something from downstairs, a soft scraping sound, like someone trying to jimmy open a window. My heart kicked into overdrive. I gripped the meat hammer tighter. Jake must have felt me tense up, because he went quiet too. The scraping stopped, then came a sharp crack, glass breaking. Jake flinched, clutching my shirt. "What was that?" he whispered. I quickly covered his mouth with my hand, told him without words, "Don't make a sound." Then we heard it. Heavy footsteps, slow, measured. He was inside. I pulled Jake even closer, feeling him shaking against me. The footsteps moved across the living room. I heard furniture being dragged, drawers yanked open. He was going through everything. Jake leaned in and whispered in my ear, "I'm scared." "It's okay. I'm here," I whispered back, though my voice was shaking just as much as he was. Then I heard the fridge open, the clink of bottles inside. Footsteps moved closer, stopping at the bottom of the stairs. The whole house went quiet. The only sounds were me and Jake, breathing hard in the dark closet. Then the footsteps started up the stairs, one slow step at a time. The old wooden stairs creaked under his weight. He wasn't even trying to be quiet anymore. I gripped the meat hammer tighter, heart pounding. He reached the top and paused. I could hear him breathing, a raspy, wet kind of wheeze. He was right outside the hallway, just a few steps from my parents' bedroom. Then he turned left, into my room. He was going through the house, room by room, systematic. Then he moved into the little upstairs lounge. Books hit the floor, chairs got knocked over. Then his steps stopped right outside our door. I quickly signaled Jake to stay quiet and held my breath. He froze in my arms. We heard the doorknob turn. Click. The lock held. He twisted it again, harder this time. The door rattled in its frame, wood creaking, but it didn't budge. Then came the pounding. Heavy, violent blows over and over, hammering the door. Jake started to cry. I pulled him in tight and slapped a hand over my own mouth to keep from making a sound. Then suddenly, it stopped. Silence. Total silence. We stayed still, just listening. Sweat was dripping down my back. The arm I had wrapped around Jake had gone completely numb, but I didn't dare move. The hammer in my hand felt heavier by the second. Jake had finally stopped crying. Then, off in the distance, I heard sirens. They were getting closer, louder. Suddenly, footsteps, rushed, bolting down the stairs. Then bam! The back door slammed shut, hard enough to shake the whole house. A police car screeched to a stop out front, red and blue lights flashing through the windows. I heard voices, officers shouting, radios crackling. Still, I didn't move. I was locked in place, clutching the hammer, holding Jake tight against me. Then came the call. "Police! Is anyone home?" Only then did I slowly open the closet door. Jake had fallen asleep in my arms. I carried him downstairs and opened the front door. 2 cops stood on the porch, with my neighbor Maya right behind them. Another pair of officers were already inside, shining flashlights over the shattered glass in the living room. "Are you hurt?" Maya asked, her face full of worry. I shook my head, still gripping the hammer. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't let it go. I hadn't even had time to call the cops. Thank God Maya saw someone creeping around our yard and dialed 911 right away. A few minutes later, Jake woke up, groggy, then totally lost it when he saw strangers in the house. I called my parents. My mom's voice was panicked on the phone. She said they'd be home right away. When they got back, she wrapped her arms around me and Jake. She was sobbing, her shirt soaked with tears. Dad just put his hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. An hour later, the cops finished taking our statements. They said they'd let us know as soon as they had more on the guy. Even after the cops left, Mom still couldn't calm down. She just kept hugging us and crying. Dad said he was installing cameras and an alarm system first thing in the morning. A few days later, my parents got a call from the police. They found him. The guy's name was Robert. They caught him the next morning, hiding out in a camper about 13 miles from our place. Turns out he'd escaped from the Indiana State Psychiatric Hospital 3 days earlier. He had a history of child abuse and had been locked up for the last 5 years. What stuck with me most, what I still see sometimes when I close my eyes, was the look on his face. Those empty, dead eyes staring at me through the kitchen window that night.